Hello, and welcome back to the Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition prep stream. We took a long hiatus. I took a long hiatus from this stream series after COVID completely destroyed the plans to play in the campaign that I had been prepping, the Heart of Shatrokas campaign. And that was, it's unfortunate, but, that happens, and that's unfortunately the world that we live in now. We have to kind of deal with that. But I am prepping other campaigns, two other campaigns, surprisingly, again, two more. And they are both going to be solely online, in addition to my Saltmarsh one that I'm still running, which is, the schedule's a bit shakier on that one. But, so I figured I would restart the campaign prep stream and talk about those two campaigns. One of them, as you saw from the intro image, and I realize I need to change the background image now, but one of them is the Rime of the Frost Maiden, which will be coming out in mid-September, so a little over a month, actually about a month and a half from right now. So I'm going to be running that for what I consider to be my primary online group, and I'll be talking about what I'm doing to prep for that. And then also, the other one is my Saltmarsh players. One of them, not consistently, but one of them tends to miss sessions more often than the rest, just with it being the summer. And so the other three players decided they wanted to start another campaign, and so I'll be talking about that campaign as well. So the screen that I have here, the screen that I have up here is, it's a website called homebrewery.naturalcrit.com. It's a very useful website. I use it a lot because as you probably learned from my previous streams, I'm all about presentation. And this website is great for presenting your Dungeons and Dragons ideas, whether those are on the GM side of the screen or on the player side of the screen, as an actual D&D module. So I will make sure that I have the link to this website in the notes and everything, but we're going to go ahead and look at, since we're doing campaign prep, I have a lot of different things on here. You can see that I've started projects, surprising no one, but we're going to look at the player character creation guide, and I'm going to hit the share button so that we get a nice full screen image there. There we go. That looks good. A little off center. That's fine. So I'm using this for both of my campaigns, and I plan to use this for pretty much every D&D campaign that I run that isn't like a special sort of event. So like if I were to do a 5th edition West Marches campaign again, like I did with Miras, which that sort of campaign was online, it had over 30 players, and it had multiple dungeon masters, I probably wouldn't use this guide. I might use some stuff from here, but I wouldn't use everything. But what this guide is it's a collection of my favorite Unearthed Arcana and D&D content that is unofficial, as in it hasn't been officially published as player material, but it's the stuff that I like and the stuff that I think creates more interesting or more balanced or just more accurate player characters than the rules as written in the player's handbook. And what do I mean when I say that stuff? Well, looking on here, the very first thing that we talk about, and again, this is levels of prep. Like, this is me laying the foundation so that future campaigns, I can just throw this at my players and be like, here's your guidelines, go from here. So this isn't the type of prep that I would do for every campaign. It's just I saw a good opportunity to do it now, get that foundation set so that later on I don't have to worry about this. I have a nice blueprint from which all of my PCs should be built from. So, ability score generation. I used to do rolling, and for Heart of Shatrokas, I had my players roll down the line. I did my tried and true rolling method, which is roll down the line. If you don't get 2 or more ability scores that are 15 plus, then you scrap the whole set and re-roll, and your rolls have to go in order. So your first roll is strength, second roll is dex, and so on. That's fun, but it can create some problems when it comes to players who want to build a specific character. And we saw this in Heart of Shatrokas, where, we didn't actually play, but where the monk, he desperately wanted to play a monk. That's what he was going to play, but he rolled a +1 on dex and a 0 on wisdom. But he still made a monk. And I could see that this this player was going to have a hard time going forward in the campaign. So I was doing what I could on the DM side of the screen by like introducing certain magic items and that sort of thing, and even creating new magic items specifically for him. But this ability score generation method in here is going to hopefully avoid that. And how is it going to avoid that? Well, let's talk about that real quick. So as you can see, it says that you can use standard array or point by. So we're not doing rolling at all. In some cases, I might do rolling, but it really depends on the group and it depends on the tone and the theme of the campaign. But really, from here on out, I want to focus on standard array or point by simply because it creates more balanced experiences, which tend to be more enjoyable for the group as a whole. But I go even further. So you get standard array and point by, but then I say additionally, a player may choose to drop one ability score from an 8 to a 6 in order to increase one other ability score by +1. So if you're starting with standard array, which are these numbers here, you can drop your 8 down to a 6 to raise your 15 to a 16. Not bad. The caveat is that no ability score after class and background adjustments, see below, may exceed 17. 17 is the hard max at character creation, and I know that this is interesting for some players, because usually what you end up seeing when it comes to D&D 5th edition optimization is that players tend to get to 20 in their main ability score as fast as possible, and that usually means waiting for 4th level, sometimes even 6th or 8th level, depending on the class, ability score adjustments so you can get there, depending on how you did, especially if you're rolling at character creation. Well, this caps you at 17. This says you cannot start the first session of the campaign with an ability score higher than 17. So that immediately puts a ceiling on everybody. And I know ceilings suck. Like, as a player, that can feel kind of bad, but I am prioritizing the play group's feelings over the individual player's feelings. I'm hoping this is going to work out. So far, it has. And then for this campaign, player character races will no longer provide ability score modifiers. This is the big one. All ability score modifiers will be provided by the player character's class. That should say and background, because class and background play into it. Races that were balanced to provide higher or lower than average ability score modifiers will be provided with updated racial features to help balance them against other races. So now everything here, so I'm getting rid of racial ability modifiers, and this isn't anything new. This was published in an article by, I think it was James Heek. I don't know how you say his last name, on D&D Beyond, and I'll have a link to the article below, or in the show notes rather. But this article, this is all pulled from that article, and it's all about, because D&D as it's written in the Player's Handbook, and this is something we've been seeing a lot lately, as concepts of race and stereotyping and stuff like that have been much more prevalent in modern media. D&D is really archaic in that all elves get +2 dexterity, all dwarves get +2 constitution, and so on and so forth. And that's something that, like, we as gamers have just been okay with, when really I think we can do better than that. And this is an attempt to do better than that. And I really like this attempt, because not only does this, even avoiding that whole argument or that whole conversation of the role of race in games, even ignoring that, this instead, you can look at it this way. This frees you up to play any race with any class, regardless of ability score modifiers. And I know you could say, well, you could always play any race with any class, and you'd be right. But if you chose a sub-optimized race class combination and everyone else in your group chose an optimized combination, that again would lead to you down the road potentially feeling like you're falling behind, like you're not keeping up with the rest of the group, and that sucks. So I basically copied and pasted that article into this document, and that was the goal. Like, I'm not, the stuff in this document is not, there's a couple things that are universal, or I'm sorry, that are original by my design, but I'm not presenting this as product. I'm not presenting this as, look at this awesome thing I did. This is literally just me collecting ideas that I like, whether they're mine or someone else's, so that I have something to show to my players when we start playing, or when we start making characters. So there's a couple of races from the Player's Handbook that are a little bit problematic with this, because like half-elf, human, and mountain dwarf, they provide stat bonuses or stat ability score bonuses beyond those of the other races. So the answers to these are the half elf. You get, instead of getting plus whatever they get knowledge of the elves, which lets you basically pick a feature from one of the other elf sub races and include it as a half elf, which is cool. Makes you feel more like an elf, or more like, a half elf than originally, which I think is really neat. The human is the same. And when I say the human is the same, is that we're no longer doing standard humans. Variant humans only. +2 to 2 ability scores of your choice. I don't see that one as problematic, because the whole idea is that humans are supposed to be adaptable and versatile, and they can take on anything, and because it's 2 to anything, it's not like +1 to dex and +1 to whatever. Because it's 2 to anything, that still allows you to customize your human however you want. So that's not going to be an issue. And then the Mountain Dwarf, instead of gaining +2 to strength, they now have martial aptitude, which I think may be a little broken. I might replace this for something else in my own design later, but currently I'm okay with it. That's when you hit with a martial melee weapon, you roll an additional 1d4 and add it to the damage. So it's essentially +2 strength, but it's just written differently. And that's going to encourage certain dwarf characters, certain dwarf class combinations, but not as strongly as just straight +2 dex would. Or, I'm sorry, +2 strength would. So now let's look at the class adjustments. This is where the meat of your starting level ability score adjustments are from your class. Every class lets you increase one of your ability scores by 2, or 2 of your ability scores by 1. But then based on the class, it limits what you can pick. So the Artificer can pick Dex, Con, or Int. The Barbarian can pick Strength, Dex, Con. The Bard and the Rogue, I believe. Yep, the Bard and the Rogue can pick any ability scores. So depending on the class you pick, you're going to have different options. But you basically get an ability score increase, an ASI, at level 1. Increase 1 ability score by 2 or 2 ability scores by 1. You cannot replace it with a feat, and we'll get more on feats later, because I also have a pretty wild change to feat progression for 5th edition in this document. And then we get background adjustments, because I wanted backgrounds to feel a little bit more important than how they already are. I mean, now currently there's something that, depending on your play group, you'll pick it. It'll probably come into play once or twice early on in the campaign, and then as you grow in level, you just tend to stop caring about it. At least in my experience, that's kind of how backgrounds go. So in this particular instance, and this doesn't necessarily change that, but it provides a little more context to your background, a little more reason to pick one of these. So when you pick a background, each background gives you 2 different ability scores, and you can increase one of those 2 by 1. So Acolyte is Wisdom or Charisma, Entertainer is Dexterity, Charisma, Guild Artisan is Strength or Intelligence, Outlander is Dexterity, so you see. But now we get to the best part, which is ability score improvements. Excuse me, I got water on my mustache. Ability score improvements, feats, and character advancement. And this is where things really kind of get shaken up. So originally we had that 17 higher, no higher than 17 at character creation. And now we kind of delve into that a little bit more. So with feats, and this is all pulled from a forum post on D&D Beyond that I actually really agreed with upon reading it, and it was something that one of my players was proposing to me as well as their DM. Basically was something like this, but once I saw it actually spelled out in a step-by-step format on that forum post, it was easier for my brain to kind of comprehend it, and I loved it immediately, so I adapted it. And this comes along with all of the feats from the Unearthed Arcana feats as well. I have those included in here. There's also one feat of my own design specifically for a player in the Rime of Frostmaiden campaign. But how I'm treating feats is that every PC at first level gets one feat of their choice for which they meet all their requirements. So you get a feat right away, first level, boom, get a feat. And that's kind of my olive branch, my peace offering for capping you at 17 at character creation for your ability scores, is I give you a feat. And the question is, well, what if I pick a feat that raises my strength from 17 to 18? Well, then you don't get that strength buff, or you just pick a different feat. There are some feats that are restricted. You can't pick them at first level, simply because from like a mastery sort of standpoint. Like, I don't think any first level character should be considered an expert or a master at any particular thing, so I kind of removed all those feats, as you can see under the restricted feats section. Crossbow expert, great weapon master, heavy armor master, blah blah blah. That stuff, you can't pick that at first level, just because I think I want to give you something to improve into. But then as you level up, the ASIs that are provided by every class, so that's at 4th level, 8th level, 12th level, 16th, and 19th level, those have to be taken as ASIs. You have to improve ability scores. You cannot sub any of those for feats. And the reason for that is because we want everybody to basically be on that same growth track. We want everybody to be advancing at a similar pace. And that's the best way to do it, is to say all of the universal ASIs, 4, 8, 12, 16, 19, those have to be ASIs. You cannot do feats. But then it says any class that provides ASIs at levels other than those. So fighter and rogue are the two. I believe those are the only two. You can replace those, because those are considered more class features than they are a universal aspect of your character. You can replace those with a feat of your choice, as long as you meet the requirements. So fighter level 4 has to take an ASI. Wizard level 4 has to take an ASI. Fighter level 6 gets another ASI. They can take that ASI, or they can choose to replace it with a feat. And then additionally, for feat advancement, PCs gain a feat when they reach 4th, 8th, 12th, 16th, 19th. So I'm not saying you can't replace your ASI with a feat at those levels. I'm saying you get the ASI and the feat. Is this going to create more powerful characters? Kind of. I mean, yes, it is, because you're giving them more feats. But here's the thing. Feats are interesting. Feats are cool. And if they have access to more feats, and more importantly, if they have access to feats that aren't at the expense of their regular ability score increase, then they're going to pick some cooler, more interesting feats, ones that aren't necessarily the optimal choice. Things like Chef, for instance, which is a new one from the Unearthed Arcana that I absolutely love. This sort of feat, it's not the best pick for any class. It's not, or any role. Like, nobody's picking Chef first because of its mechanics. But what it represents is just it's so cool. And it has really cool mechanics in it too. Like, the whole, like, resting and hit dice and all that, like, the way that it plays into that is really cool. But more importantly, I'm a cook. I'm going to make you guys meals. And I think that's really cool that this exists. But nobody would pick it unless they had access to more feats, and unless they got their feat along with their ability score increase rather than instead of. I know some players would, but again, those players aren't the optimization players. Most of the players I play with tend to be on the optimization side of things. And not only that, the way this system works is that it encourages both optimization and branching out and doing crazy stuff. It doesn't force you to pick one or the other. And because it really evens that playing field, I really love everything about this. So I have all the feats in here from the Unearthed Arcana. And then one of my players has a very specific image or idea or fantasy that he wants for his character in the Rime of Frostmaiden campaign. And that character is a ranger whose magic comes in the form of inscribing runes, and his primary weapons are dual hand axes that he wields both as melee and as thrown weapons. That's very specific. And the way D&D 5th edition is set up currently is that there is a dual weapon fighting style, or dual wielder fighting style, and there is, in Unearthed Arcana, there's a thrown weapon fighting style that I include in here. But there's a dual weapon feat, but there's no thrown weapon feat. So there's this really weird disconnect where it's like they want some players to be able to throw weapons, but they don't want that to be their primary thing. Whereas this player's like, that's what I want to do. Like, I want to throw my axes, and then when they get close, I want to hit with my axes. And I'm like, that's awesome. I think that should work. So he and I and a couple other players worked together to create this feat, Thrown Weapon Mastery. So it increases your strength or dex by 1 to a max of 20. That's pretty standard. When you take the attack action, you may draw a thrown weapon as part of that attack. That's also pretty standard. I think the thrown weapon fighting style that's in Unearthed Arcana that I have in this document does that same thing. Your successful thrown weapon attacks deal +1 damage. So we get a nice little damage buff on there. Not big at all, but it's nice. And then when an enemy moves within your normal thrown weapon range, you may draw and throw a weapon at that enemy as an attack of opportunity using your reaction. So there's a nice little... that's the cherry. That's the reason you take Thrown Weapon Mastery. Everything else is nice. The the ability score bonus, the damage bonus, like that's nice. But that bottom one, that's the effect, is that you get an attack of opportunity when someone enters your normal range. So that's like what, 60 feet, 40 feet? I forget. But either way, that's awesome. That's really cool. And that's something he'll use. And, ooh, that's not great. I wonder why that's formatting like that. It looked fine previously. Is it doing that on every page? Ugh. Okay, well, and then everything beyond here is the class feature variants, Unearthed Arcana. Nothing new there. All this stuff is stuff that existed already. You know what? We're just going to go into my edit mode. Boom. So over here is, in case you actually want to see what Homebrewery looks like, this is where you would edit everything. And then it shows you real time what it looks like on the right. And we're just going to zoom this in, because I'm pretty sure it all looks fine here. Let's go to Ranger. Yeah, it all... Oh, no. There, that's a problem. Yep. Okay, so I have formatting issues that I have to fix. But anyway, all of this class stuff it's found in the Unearthed Arcana. You can find it online. I love it. I love that it provides all these options, and it's sad that none of them have made it into the official rules yet, but there's only a couple things I changed, and then there's new fighting styles as well. Okay, but now we're going to get into the meat of it. These are class variants, because again, some of my players, they had very specific things they wanted to do that weren't accurately represented in D&D 5th edition in the Player's Handbook, or at least from published materials. Or in this case, for the Druid, my Druid player was like, I want to play a shape-shifting Druid, but shape-shifting in 5e doesn't do what I want it to do. It's kind of boring. And I agree with him. Shape-shifting in 5e, it's cool, but it is kind of boring, because all you do is you assume the stat block of the monster. You don't get any special abilities unless the monster has those abilities, but you can't change into any cool monsters anyway, because the CR is so low. And it's weird that they made that, because it's like, why would they make the CR requirement, or the requirement of the Druid shape-shifting so low? It must be to counterbalance the fact that you get this HP bonus, this temp HP bonus equal to the full HP of the form. Well, why not reduce the HP gained in order to increase the different animals that you can take the form of? So that's kind of what I did. Basically, my subclass variant, Druid Circle of the Claw, it replaces the Circle of the Moon from the Player's Handbook. And this is what we do. This is basically what I went with, is that instead of changing into specific animals and assuming their stat blocks, you are changing into one of 5 forms. And the exact animal that is represented as that one of those 5 forms can change. It's up to you. Doesn't matter what it is. Your flight form, for instance, could be an owl, could be an eagle, it could be a bat. And you can change that every time you change into it. That's fine. So you get 5 forms. You get aquatic, flight, guardian, lurker, and primal. Aquatic is exactly what you think. Flight is exactly what you think. Guardian is your tanky form, your big animal that takes a lot of hits. Lurker is your stealthy form. That's all about surprise attacks and getting out of dodge. And then your primal form is like a mix between guardian and lurker. They're your all-around combatant. So you get 5 forms. You get them right away. You get them at 2nd level. You can change into any one of them. The number of times you can change is equal to your proficiency modifier. So it's no longer 2 until you hit 18th level and then unlimited. It's now proficiency. So 2 to 6, which I think is way better scaling than 2 to unlimited. All the other rules about changing stay the same. You can't cast spells. You can maintain spells that you cast while you were in your normal form, but you can't cast new spells while you're in your shapeshifted form. Blah, blah, blah. The biggest difference is that you don't get a new stat block. Instead, your form provides these changes to your existing stat block, but otherwise you use the stats of your existing character. So it's actually a little easier to run, in my opinion. I haven't actually seen it in play yet, but it's easier, I hope, to run than the basic Druid. Because the basic Druid, you have to have all these cards, or you have to have a book open, you have to be flipping back and forth, you have to be looking at your character sheet and the stat block of the monster, and that just kind of gets to be a lot. Especially if you want to change the enemies that you want to change in, or the creatures you want to change into. Whereas this, let's look at aquatic form. So when you shift, You gain temp HP, but it's not equal to the max of the animal you're shifting into, because again, we're doing away with animal stat blocks. Instead, you gain an amount equal to the form. The form gives you, like, okay, aquatic form gives you 2d8. So you roll 2 dice, 2 8-sided dice. And then you either add your con or your wisdom modifier, and you gain that as temporary hit points. The flight form gives you 1d8. The guardian gives you 4d8. So it changes. Also, when you change, you can expend a spell slot, to gain an additional number of d8s in temp health equal to the level of the spell slot that you expended. So it's kind of a rework of the healing, the self-heal that they got in the PHB, but now instead it does it when you shift. When you shift out of that form, you lose all temp HP granted by the form. The temp HP does not... When you use up all that temp HP, you're still in the form, though. You're not forced out, because you're not getting a big... Like, if you change into a bear, you're not getting 25 extra hit points. You're getting 4d8 plus con or wisdom. So you could get 25, you could get more than that, or you could get less than that. You're probably going to get less. The form also changes your movement. So the aquatic form, your movement speed becomes 5 feet, but you gain a swim speed of 40 feet. You can hold your breath for up to 30 minutes. And then you gain advantage on wisdom and constitution saving throws for aquatic form. Every form does 2 different saving throws that they give you advantage on. So they don't actually change your numbers. They just change how you roll the dice. And then every form has their own attack. And sometimes an extra ability. So like aquatic had hold breath, flight form had flyby, guardian doesn't have anything because you get 4d8 plus counter mod, and you also do 1d8 piercing or slashing damage. Lurker has keen smell and nimble escape, so they're actually pretty great. And then primal form has keen smell and pack tactics. So that's how that works. It encourages, to a degree, changing forms multiple times in combat, whereas classic druid, you want to just pick whatever form worked for the current situation and stay in that form for as long as you could. Excuse me. But here's the kicker, and here's the most exciting part, is that at second level, you get to pick empowerments. And form empowerments, you get 3 at second level, and then you get 2 at 6th, then 2 at 14th. Every time you gain a level, you can replace one empowerment with another. But these are your, not really maneuvers. They're your eldritch invocations of your shape-shifting. So each empowerment goes with multiple, usually 2, forms, and they do different things. So Bash gives you a new attack that can knock enemies back. Blood Frenzy gives you advantage on melee attacks against enemies that don't have all their hit points, but only in certain forms, only as aquatic and primal. Camouflage only works in Lurker and aquatic, and that's you have advantage on stealth checks. And so on down the list. There's one that I really like, which is Hulking Beast. Where is that? Here it is, Hulking Beast. Aquatic or Guardian form. You're now large when you change. Your size changes to large, and you gain plus 10 additional HP. So there's a number of them, and there's a lot. And like I said, you get 3 when you take this circle, and then you can replace them as you level, and you get 2 additional ones at 6 and 14. So you get 7 total. That's not a lot. And then the other things are Beastly Strike, Natural Mind, Natural Body. Those are honestly very boring because the empowerment is so cool. Beastly Strike, it changes your attacks to magical attacks, and then all of your forms get multi-attack. Natural Mind is if you're charmed or frightened when you shift, you suspend that effect until you go back to your regular form. And Natural Body is the same, but for poisoned or diseased. And then that also has the spend a spell slot to regain HP. So that's the Druid of the Claw. That's the one I'm the most excited to see in action because it's the one that took the most... My stomach is just going crazy. I apologize if you can hear that. I skipped breakfast. Probably a bad idea. I was just so excited to get back into the stream. So I'm the most excited to see Druid because this is the one that took the most work. Oh, Ranger. All right, now I actually have to look at this. The Ranger subclass is to go with that Ranger that I described previously. Where's the issue coming in? Let's just go like this. That should fix it. Hopefully. That looks like it did it. This Ranger subclass is made for the player who wants to be the runic inscribing, 2-axe throwing Ranger. And so the Northern Warden subclass is basically a runic magic. Like, I want to focus on someone who inscribes runes and then empowers those runes with his magic. And so how this works is they have spells just like some of the other ranger subclasses. So at 3rd level you get absorb elements, 5th misty step, wind wall, fire shield, tree stride. So very northern wilderness feel is what I was going for. These were actually picked by the player, and I love that. I loved all of them, so I took it. How this works is the Northern Warden gets a number of inscription dice equal to their wisdom modifier, minimum of 1. They're d6s, and they use these to empower runes. Not to inscribe runes, but to empower the runes. During a short rest, the Northern Warden may carve a rune onto a wooden piece of equipment or a piece of equipment with any amount of wood on it, as long as there's enough for you to carve a rune on it. And then, when you carve a rune, you may spend one of your inscription dice to empower that rune. You choose one of the runes from this list to empower that piece of equipment with. Some of them are restricted. Most of them can go on anything. When that rune is used, when the bearer of that equipment draws on the empowerment to use the magical effect, they roll the inscription die. If they roll a 1 through 4, the empowerment's power, the rune's power drains, and it cannot be used again. If they roll a 6, then they can keep using it. Every time you use it, you roll that die. And if ever so you're on a time limit. You're probably going to get 1 use out of every rune, maybe 2, probably not, but maybe 3. Every so often you'll get to something that'll be like 3 or 4. This can cause a problem because the ranger can inscribe runes on anything they want, and then basically they have a number of dice to decide which runes they're going to empower. And then when they take a long rest, they get all their dice back. But if like, let's say I inscribe the barbarian's great axe handle with a rune and I empower it with a die, and then I take a long rest, I don't take that die back. That die stays there as long as he didn't roll a 1 through 4 when using it. I gain another die. So it's a potentially infinite loop, but because the runes are so fragile and that using them once is very likely to drain that power, I'm okay. I think I'm okay with that. We're going to see this in play in a few weeks, but I think I'm okay with that potentially unlimited, because I honestly don't think it's ever going to get that bad. Northern Bulwark lets you spend inscription dice to soak damage. Vengeance of the North lets you spend inscription dice to reroll attacks with advantage. And then Improved Inscription, it changes your dice from a d6 to a d8. That's at 11th level, and then Unbreakable is at 15th level. When you have all of your hit points, any attack against you which doesn't have advantage is made with disadvantage. So it's cool, but we're not going to get there because the campaign theoretically ends at 14th level. But let's talk about the empowerments. Most of these are just spell effects. Most of these are like the Monk Key, the elemental, the Way of the Four Elements subclass. So there's the Rune of Agathis that lets you cast, the character can spend their action to cast Armor of Agathis using the rune instead of a spell slot. Rune of Alacrity, Gift of Alacrity. Rune of Bless lets you cast Bless just on yourself, so the bearer of the equipment that's inscribed can spend the die to cast Bless on themselves. How that works, how concentration spells work with this, is that instead of... you don't ever make concentration checks because it's the rune that's empowering you. Instead, at the start, so when you cast it, and at the start of every turn thereafter, you roll the inscription die, and if you roll a 1 through 4, the spell ends. So you're likely to get 1 round, maybe 2, possibly 3. So it's not as powerful as actually casting Bless, but it lets someone who otherwise would not be able to cast Bless to do so. And also the bearer doesn't have to use it until they feel like they need to. Like there's nothing saying that you have to use it in the next encounter. There's Fairy Fire, the Rune of Force that lets you knock creatures back. The Rune of Free Movement increases your speed by 10 feet, and attacks of opportunity have disadvantage, and the bear's jump distance is tripled. So that's a big movement one. That one might be too powerful. We'll see. Rune of Frigid Blades, Northern Flames, and Northern Storms, those all add extra damage to the weapon strikes. So Frigid Blades adds cold damage, Northern Flames adds fire, Storms adds lightning. The Rune of Frigid Rebuke lets you do cold damage back at an attacker, just like Hellish Rebuke lets you do fire. Rune of Returning lets you, if the object leaves your grip, it comes back. You can spend a bonus action to bring it back to your hand. This one, you don't roll the inscription die when you use the rune until the end of the encounter. So then all you're doing is, like, for him with the throwing axes, you throw the axe, you get it back. If it just worked once, that'd be really lame and you never use it. So instead, you get to do it, and at the end of the encounter, probably going to drain the rune. Rune of Shield gives you, the bearer gets +5 bonus to AC and takes no damage from magic missile. Oh, it's a reaction. It's the shield spell, essentially. And then Rune of True Sight gives you True Sight out to a range of 15 feet. Oh, gosh, they're all like this. I don't know what happened. I don't know why it's like this. Next was a monk. So one of the players wanted to play something called a Miko, which I'd never heard of before. But it is a monk subclass in this, and it's actually pretty simple. A Miko is a member of a temple or a shrine that is all about banishing demons. They have a piece of paper called an ofuda that they draw or they write an enchanted symbol on, and then they basically slap that ofuda on something, an object, a person, to give extra powers or to cause, magic effects. So how this works, this was a very simple rebuild, because here's the thing, monks are already super good, so I wanted to be careful with this one. But I also wanted to make it feel like the character's playing a Miko. So the first feature is Disciple of the Kami. How this works is it describes the use of ofuda instead of spell slots, instead of ki, that sort of thing. So basically the ofuda takes the place of any material components, and in order to cast a spell, any one of these spells that have a target, you have to slap the ofuda on that target. At third level, so at every level, whenever they gain a feature, they get one spell that's always prepared, they always have access to it, and then they get a choice when they finish a long rest to prep one of, like, 3 other spells. The Miko is a very the Miko is a very support-based subclass, so it's kind of like a monk cleric. So at third level, you get Bless and Protection from Evil and Good. Those are automatically prepped. You can cast them however you want. And then additionally, at the end of a long rest, you can prepare one of the following spells: Bane, Cure Wounds, or Shield of Faith. Once you reach 5th level in the class, you can spend additional ki points to increase the level of a spell. So you still use your ki to cast spells, just like the Way of the Four Elements, but you also, the ofuda, again, is just the material components. The spell's level increases by 1 for each additional ki point you spend, the maximum number of ki points. So this follows the exact same as the Way of the Four Elements. The difference is that I actually reduced the maximum ki, or did I increase it? I felt like the Way of the Four Elements was a little too restricted. So I opened that restriction up a little bit for the Miko. The difference is that there's no damaging spells in here. They're all support spells. So I don't think this is going to cause too many problems, having a slightly overpowered version of the Way of the Four Elements. I don't think. Then they get ofuda proficiency at 3rd level. I describe exactly what an ofuda is as far as game mechanics. And then we have Add Up to the Kami. You gain the Lesser Restoration spell, and additionally you can prepare one of these spells at the end of a long rest. Aid, Calm Emotions, or Hold Person. Master of the Kami, you get Dispel Magic, and then you get Protection from Energy, Revivify, or Remove Curse. And then Spirit Mistress is the 17th level one. We're not going to get there, but Banishment, Death Ward, Dispel Evil and Good, Freedom of Movement. So you get options. That's really cool. And then the Wizard subclass variant, it's the Spell Sword. And this is just kind of a retooling of the Bladesinker. So 4 of the 6 players in this campaign are running with custom subclasses. And the Spell Sword is, again, they're a variant of the Bladesinger, but we made it so that it's not elven focused, it's not focused on song. It's more just like acrobatically weaving magic and sword use together. Otherwise, they're very much like the Bladesinger. So you get Spell Sword training at 2nd level. Gives you you get proficiency with light armor and proficiency with one type of one-handed melee weapon of your choice. And then you also gain proficiency in acrobatics if you didn't already have it. And then Channel the Weave is your another 2nd level feature. You can use a bonus action to start the channel that lasts for a minute. It ends if you are incapacitated. Hi, Carrot Potato. Thanks for joining. It ends if you're incapacitated, if you don medium or heavy armor or a shield, or if you use two hands to make a melee weapon attack. So as long as you're still using one single-handed melee weapon and you're still wearing light armor, the channel is going to keep going. You can dismiss it at any time, free action, and then you gain these benefits. You use your melee weapon attacks that use dexterity, use intelligence instead. So it encourages you to go with dex weapons, with finesse weapons. So like the rapier is essentially what you're going to want as a spell sword. You gain a bonus to your AC equal to your intelligence modifier, minimum +1. Your walking speed increases by 10 feet. You have advantage on dexterity acrobatics checks, and you gain a bonus to any constitution saving throw you make to maintain concentration on a spell equal to your intelligence. These are pretty much copied over from the Blade Singer and just rethemed to be less about song and less about performance and more about acrobatics and finesse fighting. And that's what this player wanted. So I was like, yeah, I'm fine with that. Let's do that. You can use this feature twice. You regain all expended uses when you finish a short or long rest. And then at 6th level, you get War Magic. You make one weapon attack as a bonus action after you cast a cantrip. And then 10th level, you get Woven Defense. When you take damage, use your reaction, expend a spell slot to reduce the damage equal to 5 times the spell slot's level. So a pretty nice damage soak there to encourage wizards to get up front. And then at 14th level, which we probably won't see this, you get Improved War Magic, which is when you cast a spell, you can make a melee attack. So those are the subclasses that I created for this campaign. That's the first layer of prep that I did. Like I said, I wanted to have a document that I could just show my players for this and all future campaigns and be like, here's my guidelines for creating characters. Follow these, and then you can make whatever other choices you want from any other published D&D material, and then we're good. And I think the biggest thing, like I said, is this guide is all about evening the playing field. And instead of forcing you to choose between optimization and cool, fun abilities, it allows you to do both. So, that's the hope. We'll see when we actually start the campaign in a few weeks. So again, that's all on homebrewery.naturalcrit.com that you can do if you wanted to make it look like an actual D&D 5th edition material. Get that, the formatting and the layout and everything. But now we're going to transfer to Roll20. And we're going to... let's talk about Rime of the Frost Maiden. I probably shouldn't, because the players in my Rime of the Frost Maiden game actually watch these streams sometimes. But we'll go quick. So this is going to be... all the campaigns I'm running right now are online, obviously. But what we are going to... let me widen this a little bit so you can see it. Okay, there we go. So we have a couple of player characters already made for this campaign. The rest of them know what they want to make. They just haven't actually put it in the game yet. I have the player character creation guide all on here. So everything we just looked at on Homebrewery, I have here on Roll20 for ease of use. So we've got ability score, adjustments, all that's there. We've got ASI, feats, character advancement. So this allows them, and all I did was just copy and paste it, and that was great. Again, Roll20 is usually pretty good at handling copy and paste, especially from some sources, but other sources it can get a little funky. But anyway, this way, if they're making a fighter, or if they're making a class that has changes, which most of them do, they can reference the stuff on Roll20 rather than having to go to a separate website to view whatever else. A few years ago, but we only leveled up once, and then our group disbanded. Haven't had anyone to play with ever since. Yeah, Carrot Potato, that's rough. D&D is great, and I'm gonna go a step further and say just role playing in general is great. D&D is fun, but like the hobby in general is awesome. Unfortunately, keeping groups together and maintaining a play schedule is probably the hardest part about D&D, or any role-playing game. And that's never going to change. But that's just something that you got to keep going out there. You can go to, again, Roll20. There's online games that are looking for pickup players. You can go to Board Game Geek or RPG Geek. And there's usually people looking for games. Like, there are ways to reach out and find other people that are running or that are interested in playing. But yeah, so I have the player character creation guide all on here. And then also, to lead into the Rime of the Frost Maiden, we're actually going to be running the encounters of the week that have been published on D&D Beyond. So every week they publish a new encounter, and the ones that they've been publishing lately are themed for Icewind Dale in preparation for this upcoming campaign release. And they're meant to be sort of like a lead up into the campaign itself. So I was like, hey guys, should we start running these like 3 weeks before the book comes out? And then by the time we're done running them, I'll have time to have read the book and we can just transition right into Frost Maiden. And they're like, yeah, totally. So I have everything that I need for the published encounters so far on here. The encounters of the week are called the Lusker Deliverers. And so like the first one is loading up the icebreaker. So I have the adventure right here. So I don't ever have to go back to D&D Beyond. I can just open this up and I have everything I need. This was, again, it was all copied from the website, pasted into a Roll20 handout. And then I just have it so that only I can see it. And so I didn't have to retype anything. I have all the links as well. So if I wanted to click one of these links, it would open up the D&D Beyond page. So I could go right into it. And then I have the handouts for the players. So like when they encounter Dragonbait, I can click show to players and they can see what Dragonbait looks like as I'm describing them. I have a list of the pickups they need to make in this first adventure. So I can actually show this handout to the players and be like, here's your list. I can show them the list and I can show them the map. And then they can decide where they're going to go and what they're going to do in what order. And then I have all the future adventures on here too, all the other ones that have been published. There's 5 so far. I don't know how many they're doing. I think they might be doing 1 or 2 more. But the basic idea is that... Oops, we got to move the Yeti down here. But the basic idea is that I don't ever need to leave Roll20. And that's the biggest thing for me when running online campaigns is I want to set it up so that if I'm leaving Roll20 to do something, it's not something that is integral to the game. For instance, if I'm leaving Roll20 while I'm running a game, then I'm leaving it to maybe message a player individually, even though I can do that here. I can totally do that here. I can say /W, and of course it says Justin is online right now, but he really isn't. So I'm going to say /W Justin, and then I can type to him. And now that's a whisper to him. No one else can see it. But sometimes I like to use Discord just because it's easier. I don't have to do the /W. I can just type in Discord. I can just find their name and do that. But I like to have everything I need to run the game in Roll20 because that just makes it so much easier for me. So for prepping Rime of the Frost Maiden, like I said, I have my player character creation guide. I have that guide here, just copied and pasted into Roll20. And then I have... Here's a really cool thing. If you don't want to have a cluttered journal like this, I have like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I have 7 different handouts here for as part of the journal. But there's more than that. Like, let's go into class feature variants. There's all the different classes here. Barbarian, Bard, Cleric. I had to create handouts for each of those, but they're not shown up in there. But you can still click in and be like, ooh, here's all the fighter stuff. The trick is to archive. Where is it? Right there. So restore handout from archive. So the fighter, all the class specific ones are archived. If we look in our archives, here we go. Boom. These are all archived. But because they're still shared with all players and because they're linked in an existing handout, I can go back to them at any time. So that keeps this clean, which is also really important. If we look at some of my old campaigns that have been running for 10, 12, 16 sessions, this journal section is a mess because I'll add stuff as we're playing and then I won't go back and sort them and that sort of thing. I have a few minutes left before I finish. So before we finish, I'm going to go to my other campaign. Yep, exit game. My games. Winter's Grasp. Which Winter's Grasp is a misnomer. We're not calling it. It's not what I thought it was originally. I was originally going to do a winter-themed... Because they wanted a horror game, a survival horror game that had psychological and isolation elements to it and everything. And I was like, okay, cool. And I love that type of game in a winter setting. So I just immediately went to that. But then I was like, no, this is very similar to Rime of the Frost Maiden. I'm already running that for other players. So I want to do something totally different for this campaign. And so Winter's Grasp, like I said, is a misnomer. This one I am making full use of dynamic lighting. I might even stream this or Rime. I don't know. I might stream one of them. It's up to the players. I won't stream it if they're not comfortable with it. But so in this one, they have their player characters made. We have the tokens right here. They're starting at level 3. The other group is starting at level 1 for Rime of the Frostmaid. But for this one, making full use of dynamic lighting, which is awesome, because then they can be like, it adds a layer of uncertainty or of tension. And also, I have what's called Explorer mode turned off. And that means when you leave an area, you don't even get to see what the layout was. You don't have Fog of War on. You just lose vision of that area. So that's really going to increase tension. And the whole premise of this campaign, I'm going to say this in the hopes that the players don't watch it. So if you're playing in this, if you're Kip, Evan, or Justin, no wait, Kip, Evan, or Brandon, don't watch this part because I'm going to spoil the campaign. The whole crux of this campaign is that they're in this castle, this huge castle that has how many floors? 9 floors and 2 basements. And they don't know why they're here. The only person so far that they've come across that they can talk to is this hag in the corner who's like a fortune teller. They don't know what's going on, why they're here. I'm going for a very Dark Souls, I'm a huge Dark Souls fan, and I just beat Dark Souls again. So I'm going for a very big Dark Souls theme, where the idea is that it's a wide open environment. Some areas are locked off, but you'll eventually find ways to access those areas. There are traps. There are enemies that are too hard for you that you could stumble into and just totally die. Like, for instance, here, this is a nice little trick. But right here is a Behir, which a Behir is a lightning lizard that's like CR 11. If these guys stumble into the lightning lizard at 3rd level, they're gonna get wiped out. But I did a little trick to show that the Behir is the level on the floor below them. So, like, yeah, I'm pointing at my screen like you can see my hand. So right here, I use the cursor, Nick. God damn it. So right here, they're on this balcony that's looking down over a floor below them. It's about 20 feet below. I want them to be aware. I got a mosquito buzzing around. I want them to be aware that the Behir is down there before they go down there, because then they're informed. Then they know there's a giant monster down there. If we go down there, it's probably going to kill us. But then if they decide to go down there, it's not on me anymore, it's on them because they have the information. But I wanted them to be able to see it. I didn't want to describe it to them, because if I just describe it to them, then there's miscommunication. And if they ask, what is that? Then I can tell them what they see. But they know it's an enemy because it has the same templating as all the other enemies. They just can't see it very well. And how I did that, because if we were to go to the 2nd floor, there it is. There's the Behir. Positioned in almost as that's where it would be normally. So, positioned in the same place. Oops. What? What happened? That's weird. Okay, positioned in the same place. So what I did is I actually used my computer. I took a screenshot just of like the little 2x3 space section of the Behir. And then I went up here and I imported that screenshot. Oh, oop, whoop, whoop. What is going on? Why is this like this? All right, we're going to turn dynamic lighting off for this because it's obviously having some troubles. There. And I imported that image of the Behir on the GM level. And so then when they get to this point, I can just go pop it onto the map level. And so now it's something that they can see. They can see an enemy down below. That's a nice little trick. I've done that a couple times before, stuff like that, where I take a screenshot of the map and then use it on the map, and that allows me to do some pretty cool things. So, all right, let's move Thaldar back to there, and let's turn dynamic lighting back on. So yeah, I haven't decided if I'm going to stream either of these campaigns. Well, I haven't actually talked to the players yet if I'm going to stream either of these campaigns. I don't know. I would be open to. I would really love to stream this one because I have some really cool traps and encounters. And this campaign is a great example of, oops, forgot that I was using him to move around the map to see where he could get to. this campaign is really great for talking about making adjustments and customizations to monsters and encounters instead of just running from the book, which I'm a huge advocate of. I always say, and I just did on Big 20 last night, so if you watch the Gamers Table stream with Big 20, I talked about how GMs and DMs should never be afraid to customize monsters. Don't be afraid to deviate from what the book says. The book is not the end all be all. You are still in charge of your game. You're still in charge of your table. I'm just making sure I deleted all the player character tokens. So you're still in charge of how the game is presented to your players. And I am a huge, especially in 5th edition, I am a huge advocate for customizing your encounters, customizing your monsters, especially bosses, because the natural action economy of D&D favors a large group of enemies versus a group of player characters. Or it favors like an even group. If you have 3 player characters, it favors 3 different types of monsters versus 3 player characters. And that really limits what you can do with encounters. So maybe in the next session, in the next campaign prep session, we'll talk about some monsters that I customized for my 3rd level party here, because I have a couple. What I did, why I did it, and that sort of thing. And we can talk about just customizing monsters in general. But otherwise, that's about all the time we have. So thank you so much for joining me for this stream. Thank you, Carrot Potato, for engaging in chat. I appreciate that. I hope to see you guys next time. I don't know when I'm going to do this again. I used to do it every Wednesday when my son was at school, but now the kids are home. He's actually getting his hour of screen time right now, which is going a little bit over, so I should get up there. So I should, anyway, I don't know when I might do it again tomorrow morning. I might do it again next week. Not sure. So just watch the stream. And as always, you can find more of my stuff at nicholascorey.com, Nicholas Corey on Twitter. Got the links right there on my little header there. And I will catch you guys next time.